Sevendust, Kill the Flaw. What to call these guys? I just like to use the term alternative, mainly because that's the stations that I heard them on, even all the way back in the late 1990s whenever these guys got started. Really, they had a great first portion of their career, and then whenever you entered into the mid to latter part of the 2000s, things got a little bit wavery for the gents. But they've enjoyed a bit of a resurgence here in the 2010s, and Kill the Flaw, which is the record here from 2015, just dropped this past Friday, is sort of a good assembly of what that has been about in roughly about 46 to 47 minutes. It shows really why they are a bit hard to classify as far as the subgenre is concerned, and also showcases that this band still does have some very good songwriting. And it's something that has to be said, but considering these groups have the same hooks, the same melodies that a lot of the other popular bands really do possess, it makes you wonder why these guys aren't on the tips of everybody's tongues that are talking about the Shinedowns of the world, either that or even the Disturbs. Why is it the Disturbed will constantly go gold, but Sevendust right now really kind of would probably struggle to do so? It's a question for the ages that may never be answered. But with Kill the Flaw, they begin with the excellent thank you. This is a great first song. It reinforces the idea that Sevendust has songwriting chops that really border on post-grunge, while also delivering a bit of a hard rock or what I like to call radio alternative touch to it, but with a little bit more of the way of edge, with a little bit more spice. And the ability that this band possesses is that they can get a little brutal whenever they want to. Their lead singer has just a dynamic range where his very soft voice really has a lot of beauty trademark behind it. Their last album actually was all acoustic, and in doing so really showed his voice's power very, very nicely. But he also has a mid-range, a dynamic range, and a yell/scream that is very, very good. That's the reason why so many people, whenever Sevendust first came out, wondered what to classify them. Some people called them heavy metal, other people called them progressive, which not quite. Not quite. They had to do a little bit more to really earn that tag, but this group shows this with Thank You in the fact that it has that single material, but it's one that you can really enjoy considering it does have some dynamisy behind it. Death Dance, which is track number 2, actually does that even better and even a little bit more concise than Thank You did, doing it about 1 minute less. And what needs to really be shown here is that the dynamisy between the verses and the choruses, vocally and musically both, certainly set up that whole idea of why isn't this the band that is going gold, or why isn't this the band that everybody's got their tongue on, which sounds really, really gross, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. I think I can understand why that is a little bit as you progress through this disc, is that even though they have all of these tools in their toolkit, which they do showcase, by the way, at one point they sound as though they're the closest reanimation of Alice in Chains from the early days of the 2000s, as far as the musical side is concerned. Once Legend's voice comes up, it is kind of all bets are off. But it's something where the style and the species of this rock album sort of starts to overstay its welcome a little bit. It's got zip to do with either sides of the musical puzzle, because vocally speaking, it's very nice to hear this much range and this much dynamisy. And on the musical side, it's something that definitely feels akin to the times. It's not something that's blindingly different, but it's not something that feels completely similar to what has been done over the course of the past 15 years in the alternative rock spectrum. It's just one that feels like it is the reason why it's not the band that is being talked about by everybody, and it's not on everybody's tongues, is because it is so unique, it is so individualized, it is something where Sevendust literally can potentially have no contemporaries in the case of what their sound and their morphology truly has become, that it becomes a very lonely place. You don't have folks that are giving it that much oomph and support on the sidelines, or you don't have other contemporary bands right alongside of you that really have that same level of experimental value to it. So throughout the course of their career, that's the reason why they've had to kind of go a little bit more conventional with some albums, and only now have you really seen that long-lasting genre of their own idea really start to maybe show its flaws a little bit, and they're trying to kill it with this record. I like the fact that this is a disc that, with songs such as Chop, aim to really showcase and slow down the whole idea of things, and gives the voice of Lejon a real chance to shine. I think that that's a great thing. While I also feel that Kill the Flaw and Silly Beast back to back is sort of a rough edge. Though Peace and Destruction, which is the second to last track, really puts things back in the proper perspective and really aims to kind of give this album a nice send-off, but unfortunately Torch does not really deliver where it needs to. It's one that feels way too ultra-typical in order for it to be a adequate bookend to really support the other end, which was Thank You, the very first track on this disc. So it just feels a bit uneven. Overall, this is an album that is filled with some of those uneven ideas, although the music itself all has a lot to really offer a listener, and really especially an alternative or a rock listener, it definitely has a lot to offer, considering it does have a different dynamic to it. It is something that is a bit outside of the norm, but is close enough to the norm where it is accessible. It's not as though walking from Metallica to an avant-garde band such as Agalloch or Arcturus, Maudlin of the Well, or In the Woods. It's not that radical of a departure. It's not like going from Pavarotti to Mayhem. This is instead just as simple as going from a conventional act such as the two we mentioned beforehand, Shinedown and Disturbed, to a group that doesn't want to stay within the same simple groove properties and instead wants to expand it a little bit and kind of give it a little bit more, almost as though infusing a little bit of Soulfly into those two bands to give it a little bit more crank as opposed to sticking with the norm. Another band that really comes to mind whenever it comes to this group is Dust for Life, in the fact that in the time whenever rock was raising up to really worship darlings such as Creed, Dust for Life was lingering in the background with this very solid alternative rock exterior that very much should have gotten the same appreciation, or some might even argue the same for bands such as Splendor or Isle of Q. But Sevendust really is able to continue to show why they are still around, why they are not on the verge of breakup, or why their lead singer isn't getting arrested for 4 different DUIs in 1 year. It's because they continue to expand their own musical horizons and continue to give it a nice little pep or a nice little punch, a little jab, which may not always make this stuff the most accessible, but it is something that makes it quite unique. Overall, this is an album that's about a 76 out of 100. It's got a lot of positives to it, but the flaws are just in the fact that there are a lot of songs that don't really jog very much memory whenever you get near the midpoint to the latter sections of this disc. It's one that becomes a little bit too similar for its own tastes, and knowing all that this band has to offer individuals, knowing all that this band has to offer the world, at times that can get a bit frustrating because they have literally the tools to make 2 completely different songs and 2 completely different styles. They could even thrash out a little bit. If you don't believe me, listen to some of the stuff off of Sevendust, their self-titled record, or Home, and tell me that it doesn't have some of the properties, especially on their self-titled debut. I want to know what you guys think about Kill the Flaw. A lot of you really wanted me to talk about this record. Are you happy with this record? Is it one that you would recommend to your friends? Is it one that you think belongs in the pantheon of great Sevendust CDs or albums? Or is it instead one that's not so much? Let me know in the comments below. For all of you that wanted me to talk about this, I'm interested in your thoughts and feelings about this Sevendust. Kill the Flaw. I'm coverkillernation, and I'll talk to you later.